From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Friday, February 7. The White House is scrambling to deal with the fallout from President Donald Trump's big plan to take control of the Gaza Strip. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says any relocations of Palestinians would be temporary, while Gaza is rebuilt. The brother of missing woman Bronwyn Winfield has called on a coroner to investigate a Sydney home where he says her body may be hidden. A new episode of The Australian's chart-topping investigative podcast, Bronwyn, is out now at bronwynpodcast.com. Donald Trump is on a gender policy blitz. He signed an executive order banning transgender athletes from women's competitions. So, what does it mean for the future of sport? That's today's episode. At the Paris Olympics, Algerian welterweight boxer Iman Khalif put on a phenomenal display of strength and speed.
The International Olympic Committee is playing defense a day after an Algerian boxer deemed a biological male faced off against an Italian opponent who was hit so hard she stopped the fight.
Italian Angela Carini could take no more, feeling unfairly overpowered by Iman Khalif.
But the crowd is absolutely roaring inside here at Centre Court at Roland Garros Stadium. 15,000 fans.
And it really started the conversation. It poured petrol on this issue of XY athletes and trans athletes being able to participate at the Olympics.
That's our chief sports writer, Jess Halloran, who was in Paris for the Games. Khalif isn't trans. She declared she was born a woman and she's recognised as female on her passport. But this is 2025 and politics is less about the nuance and all about the heat and light.
Because with this executive order, the war on women's sports is over.
At the White House, surrounded by a crowd of beaming women, Trump invoked that boxing match and Iman Khalif's subsequent gold medal as one of the reasons he's banning transgender athletes from women's sport.
And who could forget last year's Paris Olympics where a male boxer stole the women's gold medal after brutalizing his female opponent so viciously that she had to forfeit just after 46 seconds, and she was a championship fighter. And actually they had two people that transitioned, and both of them won gold medals, and they won them very convincingly.
Trump signed an executive order stripping federal funding from schools and universities that allow transgender women and girls to compete in female sports.
And this doesn't have to be long. It's just all about common sense. It doesn't have to be long. In a few moments, I'll sign a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. It's about time.
The order is called Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, and it's an interpretation of something called Title IX. That's a 50-year-old federal law banning sex discrimination in education.
Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
As Trump spoke, bureaucrats and officials across government, from healthcare to defence and the criminal justice system, were adjusting to the new mood. They're concerned they'll lose federal funding if they continue operating in the ways they have been. Public servants have been ordered to remove pronouns from their email signatures. In the health system, references to gender diversity and even the acronym LGBT have been scrubbed from government websites. The military has halted recruitment of transgender personnel, placed trans service members on administrative leave, and limited access to spaces like bathrooms on base. Trump says that's led directly to an uptick in recruitment.
Every single day, nearly 350 new soldiers enlisted to defend our nation. And they're very, very happy to have done so. They just said there's a spirit about our country that they haven't seen in many, many years. And I happen to agree with that.
In hospitals, patients receiving gender-related treatment have found their prescriptions aren't being filled and their surgeries cancelled. Transgender inmates held in the nation's prisons are being transferred between facilities, transgender women to men's prisons and vice versa. And the distribution of many millions of dollars in aid has been stopped following claims it was funding diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives abroad. DEI is the Trump administration's forbidden acronym. It's prompted a wave of legal action from trans military recruits and prisoner advocates who say vulnerable people are being discriminated against and put at risk.
So in recent years, the radical left has waged an all-out campaign to erase the very concept of biological sex and replace it with a militant transgender ideology. You've heard a little bit about this, haven't you, huh? Just a little bit? Does anybody agree with them? No. Would be not a good thing to say yes right here. Female athletes have been forced onto the front lines, and men claiming to be girls have stolen more than 3,500 victories, that's a lot, and invaded more than 11,000 competitions designed for women.
Coming up, what now for women's sport? Don't forget, we're hosting a very special live event at the Art Gallery of New South Wales in Sydney later this month. Join Bronwyn creator Hedley Thomas, as well as national crime correspondent David Murray, senior writer Matthew Condon and me on February 27 for an exciting live discussion of all things true crime podcasting. It's open to the public and you can get your tickets right now at theaustralianplus.com.au. That's theaustralianplus.com.au. The other case that many people would remember is the swimmer Leah Thomas, someone who has gone through male puberty but who is a trans woman.
Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
Tell me about the Leah Thomas case. Why was that so controversial?
It was controversial because Leah Thomas was actually a member of the University of Pennsylvania's men's swim team for a long time, and she then went on to transition to become a woman, and in March 2022 she won an NCAA First Division title in freestyle, and she also did this incredible interview with Sports Illustrated where she said she wanted to swim at the Paris Olympic Games, and from that it triggered change. It really set World Aquatics into a bit of a spin about what to do around their policies. And what happened in the end, that World Aquatics made the decision to effectively ban trans women from competing in female categories at an Olympic and world level.
That set world swimming at odds with the International Olympic Committee, which was more open to including trans athletes in women's competitions. You cover a lot of sports, Jess, from athletics to rugby league to sports like swimming. What do you hear from athletes, female athletes, about what they want to happen in relation to this issue?
I think they want a fair playing field. I think women have had to fight very hard for attention in this space, to be treated fairly, to get adequate training facilities. Even to this day, you look at, say, female football clubs, women are using the gym after the men have done their time in the gym. They're always second to the men's teams. It's never really even because it hasn't been a level playing field yet. What they're saying privately is that many female athletes are outraged that this has been allowed. It's created a huge debate and a lot of stress for women at times, but they've also been very afraid of publicly saying so. Like, it is deemed to be stepping out of line or not being seen as being accepting of all people if you push back against elite female trans athletes.
A lot of institutions have had to deal with the idea that people want to change gender. The military, the criminal justice system, education. But it's really sport where it's the most visible and where some people like Martina Navratilova have spoken out very publicly. How do you think sport has handled it, and what difference will it make that Donald Trump is now being so very clear and forceful about imposing his view?
I think hopefully it will bring sporting bodies into line with what should be, especially at an elite level, just really fair. I think once you get to that elite level, it's not about feelings anymore. You're seeing a new generation of leaders rise. The people lining up to replace Olympic President Thomas Bach, the likes of Christy Coventry and Sebastian Coe, are two figures in world sport who are really making it clear that they're going to push back against trans women competing in the elite female sports.
Jessica Halloran is the Australian's chief sports writer. You can get your head around the first weeks of the new Trump administration anytime at theaustralian.com.au.